The rain hammered against the windows of the Romano estate like bullets seeking entrance. Inside the grand library, 23-year-old Bella Morty sat rigid in a leather chair, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. Across from her father's mahogany desk stood a man who looked like he'd been carved from marble and dipped in sin. Lorenzo Romano was everything the rumors promised and more. At 38, he commanded attention without uttering a word. His tailored black suit hugged a frame that spoke of disciplined power, and his dark eyes held the kind of danger that made smart people run, but Bella wasn't running. She couldn't. "It's decided then," her father, Salvatore Morty, announced, his voice carrying the weight of finality. "The marriage will take place in 3 weeks. This union will end the bloodshed between our families and strengthen both empires." Lorenzo's gaze hadn't left Bella since she'd entered the room 20 minutes ago. She felt it like a physical touch, invasive and unavoidable. When he finally spoke, his voice was smooth whiskey over gravel. "Does the girl agree?" The girl, Bella's jaw tightened. She forced herself to meet his stare, refusing to be intimidated despite the fear coiling in her stomach like a snake. "Does it matter?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Something flickered in Lorenzo's expression, amusement perhaps or respect. "It matters to me." Salvatore slammed his hand on the desk. "Bella, this isn't a negotiation. 5 years of war have cost us too much. Lorenzo has agreed to this arrangement despite his reservations about marriage. You will do your duty to this family." Duty? The word had defined Bella's entire life. Duty to be the perfect daughter, to smile at the right people, to never ask questions about the blood on her father's shirts or the screams she sometimes heard from the basement. Now duty demanded she marry a man known throughout the underworld as Il Diavolo, the devil. "I agree," Bella said quietly, though every instinct screamed at her to flee. Lorenzo nodded once, then turned to her father. "I'll send the details for the ceremony, and Salvatore, she moves into my home tomorrow. If we're doing this, we do it properly." "Tomorrow," Bella's composure cracked. "That's non-negotiable," Lorenzo interrupted, his eyes finding hers again. "You'll be my wife in 3 weeks. I want you under my roof and my protection immediately. There are people who won't be happy about this union." Before Bella could respond, Lorenzo strode from the room, his presence somehow lingering even after the door closed behind him. Her father poured himself a generous scotch. "You'll learn to appreciate him, Bella. Lorenzo Romano is the most powerful man in this city. You could have done much worse." Bella doubted that. She'd heard the stories, how Lorenzo had taken control of the Romano family at 25 after his father's assassination, how he'd consolidated power through a combination of strategic brilliance and ruthless violence, how he'd remained unmarried despite countless women throwing themselves at him. And now she would be his wife, his possession, another piece on his chessboard. The Romano mansion made Bella's family estate look like a cottage. Perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, it was a fortress disguised as a luxury home, all clean lines and bulletproof glass. As Bella's car pulled through the iron gates the next morning, she felt like she was entering a beautiful prison. Lorenzo waited at the entrance, dressed more casually than the night before in black slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. It somehow made him more intimidating, revealing the tattoos that snaked up his forearms and the shoulder holster he wore without shame. "Welcome home," he said, and Bella hated how the word home in his deep voice made her stomach flutter. A woman in her 50s appeared behind him, her warm smile a stark contrast to Lorenzo's intensity. "I'm Maria, the head of household staff. Let me show you to your rooms." "Rooms?" Bella asked. Lorenzo's expression remained neutral. "You'll have your own suite. I'm not an animal, Bella, despite what you may have heard." The tour revealed a home that was both intimidating and stunning. High ceilings, priceless art, and enough security measures to protect a president. But it was Bella's suite that truly surprised her. The bedroom was twice the size of her old one, decorated in soft creams and golds. French doors opened onto a private balcony with ocean views, and the attached bathroom was pure luxury. "The closet has been stocked," Maria explained. "Lorenzo had a stylist prepare a wardrobe based on your measurements. If anything doesn't fit or isn't to your taste, just let me know." Bella walked to the closet and opened it, finding racks of designer clothes, shoes, and accessories. Everything was expensive, tasteful, and in her exact size. The thought of Lorenzo putting this much consideration into her comfort unsettled her more than if he'd been cruel. After Maria left, Bella explored her suite looking for cameras or anything sinister. She found nothing but luxury and privacy. As she stood on the balcony, breathing in the salt air, a knock sounded on her door. Lorenzo entered without waiting for permission, carrying a small velvet box. "I thought you might want this tonight." He opened it to reveal a stunning engagement ring, a large oval diamond surrounded by smaller stones set in platinum. It was the kind of ring that made statements and sealed fates. "Give me your hand," Lorenzo commanded softly. Bella hesitated, then extended her left hand. His fingers were warm as they wrapped around hers, surprisingly gentle as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, of course. "3 weeks," he said, still holding her hand. "Then you'll wear my wedding ring too, but I want you to understand something, Bella." His thumb brushed over her knuckles, a gesture that might have been tender from anyone else. "I don't do anything halfway. When you become my wife, you'll have my protection, my resources, and my loyalty. In return, I expect the same." "And love," the question escaped before Bella could stop it. Lorenzo's laugh was bitter. "Love is a fairy tale for civilians. We're not those people, but I'll never humiliate you, never raise my hand to you, and I'll kill anyone who tries to harm you. That's the best I can offer." It should have been cold comfort. Instead, something in his honesty made Bella's chest tighten. In their world, promises like that meant more than pretty words about love. "Dinner is at 8, Lorenzo said, releasing her hand. "I expect you there, we have a lot to discuss." After he left, Bella stared at the ring on her finger, watching it catch the light. 3 weeks until she became Mrs. Romano. 3 weeks until her life changed forever. She just hoped she'd survive it. Dinner that evening was an intimate affair despite the formal dining room that could seat 30. Lorenzo sat at the head of the massive table while Bella was positioned to his right, close enough that she could see the scar that ran along his jawline. "Tell me about yourself," Lorenzo said as their first course was served, a delicate soup that Bella barely tasted. "Your file said you studied art history at university." "You have a file on me." "I have files on everyone." His tone suggested this should be obvious. "You graduated top of your class 2 years ago but haven't worked since. Why?" Bella set down her spoon carefully. "My father didn't see the point. He said my only job was to be a good daughter until I became a good wife." Something dark flickered across Lorenzo's face. "You'll continue your education if you want, or start a career. I won't have a wife who feels caged." "Really?" Bella couldn't hide her skepticism. "I'll be married to a mafia boss. Exactly what kind of career path is available to me?" Lorenzo smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. "You'd be surprised. My sister Lucia runs one of my legitimate businesses, an art gallery downtown. She's always looking for someone with actual knowledge instead of just wealthy collectors' daughters playing at work." "You have a sister." "2 sisters and a younger brother. You'll meet them tomorrow. They're protective." The way he said it suggested protective was an understatement. As dinner progressed, Bella found herself relaxing incrementally. Lorenzo asked thoughtful questions about her interests, her opinions on various artists, her thoughts on the city. He listened intently, and she got the sense he was filing away every piece of information for later use. "What about you?" Bella finally asked as dessert was served. "The file I don't have on you probably doesn't tell the whole story." Lorenzo's eyebrow raised. "Bold, I like that. What do you want to know?" "Why did you agree to this marriage? You're powerful enough that you didn't need this alliance." He was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "The war with your family was becoming expensive in ways that had nothing to do with money. Good men were dying over a grudge that started before either of us was born. When your father proposed this solution, I saw an opportunity to end it without more bloodshed." He paused. "And I'm 38 years old. My family has been pressuring me to produce an heir. You solved that problem too." The bluntness of his answer should have stung, but Bella appreciated the honesty. "An heir, you want children." "Eventually, not immediately." His eyes met hers, intense and searching. "Despite what you might think, I'm not completely heartless. I know this situation isn't fair to you. I'm willing to give us time to adjust before adding that pressure." "How generous," Bella said dryly. Lorenzo actually laughed, a real one that crinkled the corners of his eyes. There it is. I was wondering when you'd show some fire. Your father made you sound like a docile little lamb. Would you have preferred a docile lamb? God, no? He leaned forward, suddenly close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. I've lived most of my life surrounded by people who only tell me what they think I want to hear. The last thing I need is a wife who's afraid to speak her mind behind closed doors. Behind closed doors. The phrase carried weight, the implication clear. She could challenge him in private, but in public she would need to play the role of devoted wife. I can do that, Bella said carefully, but I have conditions too. Lorenzo sat back looking intrigued. Name them. I want freedom within reason. I won't be a prisoner in this beautiful house. I want to be able to see my mother. Bella's voice caught slightly. Her mother, the only person who'd cried when this arrangement was announced. Done. Security will accompany you, but you can go where you want. Lorenzo's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Anything else? Fidelity. Bella held his gaze even as her cheeks heated. I know that's not standard in marriages like ours, but I won't be humiliated by mistresses. The air between them grew charged. Lorenzo's eyes darkened with something Bella couldn't quite name. There will be no mistresses, he said, his voice dropping lower. When I make a vow, Bella, I keep it. You'll be my wife in every sense of the word. That means something to me, even if it's an arranged marriage. The intensity of his declaration made Bella's pulse race. She'd expected many things from Lorenzo Romano, but not this, not promises of fidelity, not gentle consideration, not the heat she saw in his eyes when he looked at her. Okay, she whispered. Okay, he echoed. Then, unexpectedly, he reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her engagement ring. 3 weeks, Bella, let's try to make the best of this, shall we? For the first time since this nightmare began, Bella felt a flicker of something that wasn't quite hope but wasn't despair either. Maybe, just maybe, she could survive being married to the devil. Maybe she could even find a way to live. The Romano siblings descended on the mansion the next afternoon like a beautiful, well-armed storm. Bella watched from the upstairs window as 3 luxury cars pulled up, her stomach knotting with anxiety. They're going to eat me alive, she muttered. Probably, Lorenzo said from behind her, making her jump. He'd moved into the room silently, a habit she was learning was typical of him. But I'll be there, just remember they're more bark than bite, usually. That wasn't reassuring. The family gathered in the enormous living room. Lucia was the first to approach, a stunning woman in her early 30s with Lorenzo's dark eyes and a smile that seemed genuine. So you're the one who finally got my brother to settle down, Lucia said, pulling Bella into an unexpected hug. I've been trying to marry him off for years. Lorenzo said you run an art gallery, Bella managed, grateful for the warmth in Lucia's greeting. I do, and Lorenzo mentioned you studied art history. We need to talk. Lucia linked her arm through Bella's, already pulling her toward the couches. I have an exhibition opening in 2 months and my curator just quit. The universe is clearly telling me something. Before Bella could respond, a younger woman appeared, mid-20s, with wild curls and an assessing gaze that was pure Romano intensity. I'm Gianna, she announced, not bothering with pleasantries. And I need to know, did our brother threaten you into this? Because I will help you escape. I have a safe house in Morocco and everything. Gianna, Lorenzo's voice carried a warning. What? It's a legitimate question. Gianna turned to Bella, her expression fierce. Our family isn't exactly known for its healthy relationships. If you need an out, I've got you. Bella found herself smiling despite the absurdity of the situation. No threats, well, not from Lorenzo anyway. The youngest Romano, Marco, who looked to be in his late 20s, sprawled in an armchair with a drink already in hand. She's diplomatic, I like her, way better than that Russian ambassador's daughter you were seeing. I wasn't seeing her, Lorenzo said flatly. We had dinner once. You had dinner because Papa was alive and wanted the alliance, Lucia corrected, settling beside Bella. This is different though, Bella's actually going to be family. The word family hung in the air, carrying weight in a way it never had before. These people, this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly warm family, would be hers soon. The afternoon passed in a blur of conversation. Lucia was indeed serious about the gallery position and spent an hour discussing art movements and upcoming exhibitions with an enthusiasm that Bella found infectious. Gianna regaled her with stories of Lorenzo's childhood, most of which he denied, and Marco proved surprisingly insightful about the politics of their world. But it was Lorenzo Bella kept noticing. The way he watched her interact with his siblings, something soft in his expression when she laughed at one of Marco's jokes. The way he touched her lower back when leading her to dinner, a possessive yet gentle gesture. The way he defended her when Gianna's questions got too personal. "Enough interrogating my fiancée," he'd said, pulling Bella close to his side. "She's been remarkably patient with all of you." After his siblings finally left, Bella found Lorenzo on the terrace staring out at the dark ocean. Without thinking, she joined him, standing close enough that their arms nearly touched. "They're wonderful," she said softly, "your family." "They're a handful," Lorenzo replied, but his tone was fond. "But yes, they're everything to me. It's why I've worked so hard to keep them safe, to keep the family's power consolidated. In our world, weakness is death." Bella understood that better than most. She'd seen what happened to families that showed weakness, had attended funerals of people who'd made strategic mistakes. "Is that why you never married before, to protect them?" Lorenzo was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, partially, I also saw what marriage did to my father. He loved my mother desperately, and when she died giving birth to Marco, it destroyed him. He became reckless, cruel. That's what got him killed in the end. The vulnerability in his admission made Bella's chest ache. She reached out, her hand finding his on the railing. His fingers immediately curled around hers, warm and strong. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be, it was 15 years ago." But his grip on her hand tightened. "I swore I'd never let emotions compromise me like that, that I'd never care about someone enough to lose myself. And now you're marrying me." "And now I'm marrying you," he agreed. He turned to face her, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. The touch was startling in its tenderness. "But this is different. We're going into this with clear eyes and realistic expectations, no illusions about love conquering all." Bella should have agreed, should have felt relieved by his pragmatism. Instead, she felt a strange sense of loss for something she'd never have, Lorenzo Romano's love. But as he leaned down, his lips brushing against her forehead in a chaste kiss that somehow felt more intimate than anything else they'd shared, Bella wondered if maybe protection and loyalty could be enough. Maybe they could be their own kind of love story. Even if neither of them was ready to admit it yet. The days began to blur together in a strange new routine. Bella spent mornings with Lucia at the gallery, learning the business and preparing for the upcoming exhibition. Afternoons were for wedding planning, endless meetings with florists, caterers, and Lorenzo's security team, who treated the ceremony like a military operation. Evenings belonged to Lorenzo. He kept his promise about not caging her, but he was also constantly present. They had dinner together every night, conversations flowing from art to politics to philosophy. He asked her opinions on his business deals, the legitimate ones at least, and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts. And there were the touches, small at first, his hand at her back when they walked, fingers brushing as they passed papers during wedding planning, the way he'd tuck a strand of hair behind her ear when they spoke. Each touch felt like a brand marking her as his. One evening, 2 weeks before the wedding, Bella found Lorenzo in his study. The room was pure masculinity, leather, dark wood, and the faint smell of gun oil and expensive scotch. He was reviewing documents, his reading glasses making him look more like a professor than a mob boss. "Am I interrupting?" Bella asked from the doorway. He looked up, and the smile that crossed his face made her stomach flip. "Never, come in." Bella settled into the chair across from his desk, curling her legs under her. "I wanted to thank you for Lucia and the gallery. I've forgotten what it feels like to be passionate about something." Lorenzo removed his glasses, giving her his full attention. "You're talented, Bella. I saw the proposal you put together for the exhibition. You have an eye for this." The praise warmed her more than it should. "Your sister is the talented one, I'm just helping." "Take the compliment," he said, standing and moving around the desk. He perched on the edge, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You're allowed to be good at things, you're allowed to want things. What if what I want is complicated?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Lorenzo's expression shifted, heat flickering in his dark eyes. How complicated? Bella's heart hammered. They'd been dancing around this attraction for 2 weeks, both of them feeling it but neither acting on it. The wedding was supposed to be their starting line, but Bella was tired of waiting. Tired of pretending this was just a business arrangement when every time he looked at her, she felt like she was burning. I want to know what it's like to kiss you, she whispered. Lorenzo went very still. Bella. We're getting married in 2 weeks. We're going to share a bed eventually. I want to know. He reached out, his fingers tracing her jawline with aching gentleness. If I kiss you now, I won't want to stop at just a kiss. Maybe I don't want you to stop. The words were barely out before Lorenzo moved. His hands cupped her face as he leaned down, and then his lips were on hers, and Bella's entire world narrowed to that single point of contact. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus and intensity. His lips were firm but gentle at first, coaxing hers open before deepening the kiss with a hunger that stole her breath. Bella's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as she stood, needing more contact. Lorenzo responded immediately, one arm banding around her waist while his other hand tangled in her hair. The kiss turned desperate, weeks of tension exploding between them. When his tongue swept against hers, Bella made a sound she didn't recognize, pure want-given voice. He pulled back just far enough to breathe, his forehead resting against hers. Bella, we should stop. Why? Her hand slid up his chest, feeling his heart racing as fast as hers. Because you deserve better than being ravaged in my study. Because when I finally have you, I want to take my time. His voice was rough, strained. Because you're not just some woman I can use and forget. You're going to be my wife, and that means something. The restraint in his words, the clear struggle for control, made Bella want him even more. She pressed closer, feeling the evidence of his desire against her hip. Lorenzo, she breathed, please. He groaned, a sound of pure masculine frustration. You're killing me, tesoro. The endearment treasure slipped out naturally. 2 weeks. After the wedding, you're mine. I'll give you everything you want and more, but let me do this right. Bella wanted to argue, wanted to tell him they were past the point of doing things right. But something in his expression stopped her, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before, a need to prove he could be better than the monster everyone believed him to be. Okay, she agreed softly, 2 weeks. Lorenzo kissed her again, slower this time but no less intense. When he finally released her, they were both breathing hard. Go, he said roughly, before I change my mind about being noble. Bella left on shaky legs, her lips tingling and her body aching for more. As she headed to her suite, she pressed her fingers to her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. 2 weeks had never seemed so long. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, sunlight sparkling off the ocean like diamonds. Bella stood on her balcony, wrapped in a silk robe, watching the final preparations below. White roses, thousands of them, adorned every surface, and security personnel disguised as waitstaff moved through the grounds with military precision. In a few hours, she would be Mrs. Lorenzo Romano. You look terrified, Lucia said, entering with a tray of coffee and pastries. Behind her came Gianna, arms full of makeup bags and hair tools. I'm fine, Bella lied. You're a terrible liar, Gianna announced cheerfully. But that's actually a good quality in this family. Now sit, we have 3 hours to make you so stunning that Lorenzo forgets how to speak. The next hours passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Bella's mother arrived, tears already streaming, and helped her into the wedding dress, a masterpiece of Italian silk and lace that Lorenzo had commissioned from a designer in Milan. It hugged her curves before flowing into a dramatic train, elegant and breathtaking. You look like a princess, her mother whispered, adjusting the cathedral-length veil. Bella stared at her reflection, barely recognizing herself. The woman in the mirror looked confident, powerful, beautiful, not like someone being sold into an arranged marriage but like someone choosing her destiny. It's time, Lucia said softly. The ceremony was taking place in the mansion's gardens. 300 guests gathered to witness the union that would end years of bloodshed. As Bella took her father's arm, she saw the pride in his eyes and something else. Regret maybe, too late for that now. The music began and Bella stepped onto the white runner, but she barely noticed the guests or the elaborate decorations. Her eyes found Lorenzo immediately, standing at the altar in a custom tuxedo that made him look like a dark prince. And the expression on his face when he saw her walking toward him made her breath catch. Awe, pure, unguarded awe mixed with something fiercer, more possessive. He looked at her like she was the only person in the world, like he was a man witnessing a miracle. When she reached him, he took her hand, leaning close to whisper, "Say Bellissima, you're beautiful." The ceremony passed in a blur of traditional vows and religious readings. But when it came time for Lorenzo to speak his own vows, he turned to face her fully, his hands holding hers firmly. "Bella," he began, his voice carrying across the silent crowd, "I'm not a man who believes in fate or destiny. I've built my life on careful planning and calculated risks. But standing here with you, I find myself grateful for whatever force brought us to this moment." He paused, and Bella saw vulnerability flash across his face. "I vow to protect you with everything I am, to honor you not just as my wife, but as my partner, to give you the freedom to be yourself while keeping you safe. And to build with you something more than either of us expected. This I swear on my life and my name." Bella's eyes burned with tears. Her own vows felt inadequate in comparison, but she spoke them with conviction. "I vow to stand beside you, to be strong when you need me to be, and to trust you with my life. To build a home with you, not just a house, and to face whatever comes next together." When the priest finally pronounced them husband and wife, Lorenzo pulled her close, his kiss sealing their vows with an intensity that had the crowd breaking into applause and a few whistles. It was possessive and tender at once, a promise of everything to come. "Mine," he murmured against her lips, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "Yours," Bella agreed. The reception was a display of wealth and power that would be talked about for years. Bella danced with her father, with Lorenzo's siblings, with various bosses and their families, but it was her first dance with Lorenzo that would be burned into her memory forever. He held her close as they swayed to a classic Italian love song, one hand at her waist and the other cradling her hand against his chest. "Happy?" he asked. Bella looked up at him, at this complicated, dangerous man who was now her husband. Surprisingly, yes. "Good." He spun her suddenly, pulling her back against him with a skill that spoke of old-world upbringing. "Because I intend to spend the rest of our lives making sure you stay that way." That's a long commitment for a man who doesn't believe in love. Lorenzo's hand tightened at her waist. "Maybe I'm starting to reconsider what I believe." Before Bella could process that statement, the song ended and they were swarmed by well-wishers. But throughout the rest of the reception, she felt Lorenzo's eyes on her constantly, the promise of their wedding night hanging between them like a live wire. Finally, as midnight approached, Lorenzo appeared at her side. "Time to go, Mrs. Romano." The title sent a thrill through her. He led her through the crowd, accepting congratulations and deflecting teasing comments about the honeymoon with practiced ease. They'd decided against traveling immediately. Lorenzo had business that couldn't wait, and Bella hadn't wanted to leave so soon after the wedding. Instead, they would spend their first night as husband and wife in the master suite that Bella had never entered, the room that had been Lorenzo's private sanctuary. As they climbed the stairs, Lorenzo swept her into his arms effortlessly, carrying her despite her protests. "Tradition," he said simply, kicking open the door to their suite. Bella had a brief impression of masculine elegance, all dark colors and clean lines, before Lorenzo set her on her feet. He reached up, carefully removing her veil and setting it aside, his fingers then finding the buttons of her dress. "Tell me you want this," he said, his voice rough. "Tell me you're not just doing your wifely duty." Bella reached up, framing his face with her hands. "I want you, Lorenzo. I've wanted you since that first kiss in your study, maybe even before that." Something in his expression cracked, the careful control slipping. "Dio, Bella, do you have any idea what you do to me?" He kissed her then, deep and demanding, walking her backward toward the bed. The dress fell away under his skilled hands, followed by layers of silk and lace until Bella stood before him in nothing but her skin and the jewelry he'd given her, the engagement ring, the wedding band, and a diamond necklace that had been his mother's. Lorenzo's eyes darkened as he looked at her, reverent and hungry at once. "Perfect," he breathed, "you're perfect." Then it was Bella's turn to undress him, her hands shaking slightly as she pushed his jacket off, unfastened his tie, unbuttoned his shirt to reveal the tattoos she'd only glimpsed before. His body was a work of art, scarred and powerful, each mark telling a story of survival. When they finally came together, it was with an intensity that stole Bella's breath. Lorenzo was as focused and thorough in pleasure as he was in everything else, learning her body with a dedication that left her gasping. He was demanding but attentive, taking her to heights she hadn't known existed before bringing her back down only to build her up again. "Look at me," he commanded as they moved together, and Bella obeyed, her eyes locking with his. What she saw there terrified and thrilled her, not just desire but something deeper, something that looked dangerously close to devotion. Afterward they lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and breathless. Lorenzo pulled her against his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. Bella propped herself up on her elbow, studying his face. In the moonlight streaming through the windows, he looked younger, the hard edges softened. "No regrets," she confirmed, then feeling brave, "What about you?" "Not a single one." He pulled her down for a slow, deep kiss. "You're mine now, Bella, completely." "And you're mine," she countered. Lorenzo smiled against her lips. "And I'm yours, God help us both." They made love again, slower this time, learning each other's rhythms and preferences. And when Bella finally fell asleep in her husband's arms, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel on her wedding night: hope. Hope that maybe they could build something real from this arranged beginning. Hope that the attraction between them could grow into something deeper. Hope that she was already falling in love with the devil, and that maybe, just maybe, he was falling too. The first month of marriage was an adjustment neither of them had fully prepared for. Bella moved into Lorenzo's suite, their suite, and slowly began making it feel like their space rather than just his. Books on art history appeared on the nightstand, her sketches decorated the desk in the corner, and the scent of her perfume mingled with his cologne in the closet. But it wasn't all domestic bliss. The reality of being married to a mafia boss hit Bella hard when Lorenzo came home one night with blood on his shirt, someone else's blood, he assured her, but blood nonetheless. The reminder of his world, of the violence that was part of his daily life, shook her. "I can't do this," she said, standing frozen in their bedroom doorway as he stripped off the ruined shirt. "I can't just pretend this is normal." Lorenzo paused, his eyes finding hers. "I never asked you to pretend. I told you who I was, what my life entails." "Knowing it intellectually and seeing it are different things." Bella's voice rose, fear and anger mixing. "What happens when it's your blood, Lorenzo? What happens when someone finally gets to you?" He crossed to her in 3 strides, gripping her shoulders. "That won't happen, I'm too careful." "Your father probably thought that too." The words hung between them, sharp and unforgiving. Lorenzo's expression hardened, and for a moment Bella saw the dangerous man everyone else saw: Il Diavolo, capable of terrible things. Then he exhaled slowly, the hardness melting. "You're right, there are no guarantees in this life, but Bella, I've survived this long by being smarter and more ruthless than my enemies. I have protocols, security, people who would die for me." "That's what scares me," Bella whispered. "People dying for you, you dying for this life." Lorenzo pulled her close, his arms banding around her. "I can't promise you that I'll live forever, no one can, but I can promise that I'll fight like hell to come home to you every night. That's going to have to be enough." It was a raw moment of honesty that bonded them more than their wedding vows had. Bella cried against his chest, and Lorenzo held her, letting her fear and frustration pour out. When she finally calmed, he tilted her face up. "If you want to leave, I'll let you," he said quietly. "I'll set you up somewhere safe, give you everything you need. I won't force you to stay in a life that terrifies you." The offer was genuine, she could see it in his eyes. And that generosity, that willingness to let her go even though it would hurt him, made her decision easy. "I'm not leaving," Bella said firmly. "I'm scared, yes, but I'm not running. We made vows, Lorenzo, for better or worse. I need you to be honest with me. Don't hide the dangerous parts. Don't treat me like I'm fragile." Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression: respect, admiration, and that growing tenderness he tried so hard to hide. "Deal, no more hiding," he kissed her forehead. "But you have to promise me something too. If anything ever feels wrong, if you're ever in danger, you call me immediately, and you listen to my security team. They're not just decoration." "I promise." They sealed the agreement with a kiss that turned heated, both of them needing the physical connection to reassure themselves that they were okay, that they could weather this storm together. 3 months into their marriage, the first real threat emerged. Bella was at the gallery with Lucia, finalizing details for an exhibition when Lorenzo's head of security, Marcus, appeared with 4 additional guards. "Mrs. Romano, we need to move you to a secure location immediately," Marcus said, his hand on his weapon. Bella's heart raced. "What's happened?" "Is Lorenzo. Mr. Romano is secure, but there's been a credible threat against you. We need to go now." The drive back to the estate was tense, the security vehicle flanked by 2 others. Lucia held Bella's hand tightly, her usual warmth replaced by the same steely determination Bella had seen in Lorenzo. At the mansion, Lorenzo was waiting, and the relief on his face when he saw her was palpable. He pulled her into his arms immediately, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Thank God," he muttered against her hair, when Marcus called. "I'm fine," Bella assured him, though she was shaking. "What's going on?" Lorenzo led her into his office, Marcus and 2 other guards following. A laptop sat open on the desk, displaying surveillance photos, and Bella's stomach dropped when she recognized herself in several of them. Someone had been watching her. "Antonio Costello," Lorenzo said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "A rival who's been trying to encroach on our territory for months. He sent these as a message that he can get to you anytime he wants." "What does he want?" "Me out of the way, you as leverage." Lorenzo's jaw clenched. "He made a mistake targeting you, Bella, a fatal mistake." Over the next week, Bella got a crash course in living under threat. She couldn't leave the estate without a full security detail. The gallery visits stopped. Even the gardens felt like a prison, beautiful but confining. And Lorenzo, he was different, more tense, more aggressive, working around the clock to eliminate the threat. She saw less of her husband and more of Diavolo, the ruthless boss who made people disappear. One night, Bella found him in his office at 3 a.m., surrounded by maps and files, a glass of scotch untouched at his elbow. He looked exhausted, the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Come to bed," she said softly from the doorway. "I can't, not until this is handled." He didn't look up from the papers. "I won't sleep while you're in danger." Bella crossed to him, gently taking the pen from his hand and setting it aside. She climbed into his lap, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You can't protect me if you collapse from exhaustion. Marcus and the team have this place locked down. Come to bed for a few hours." "Bella, that's an order from your wife," she said with a small smile. "Or do I need to remind you who really runs this house?" That got a ghost of a smile from him. "You think you run this house?" "I know I do, Maria told me so." Lorenzo actually laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Maria's been with this family for 30 years, she probably does run everything." He stood, lifting Bella with him. "Fine, a few hours, but if anything, Marcus will wake you immediately, I know." In bed, Lorenzo held her close, his body finally relaxing against hers. "I can't lose you," he admitted into the darkness. "These past few months, Bella, you've become everything to me. The thought of Costello putting his hands on you makes me want to burn the world down." Bella's heart clenched at the raw emotion in his voice. "You won't lose me, we're going to get through this." "You have too much faith in me." "No," she corrected, pressing a kiss to his chest. "I have exactly the right amount of faith in you. You're Lorenzo Romano. You've survived everything life has thrown at you. This will be no different." He tilted her face up, studying her in the moonlight. "How did I get so lucky?" "You married me, best decision you ever made." "Cocky," he murmured, but he was smiling as he kissed her, slow and deep and full of emotion he still couldn't quite voice. They made love slowly, a reaffirmation of their bond, a promise that they would survive this together. And when Lorenzo finally fell asleep, Bella stayed awake a bit longer, running her fingers through his hair and making her own silent promises. She would be strong for him, she would be the partner he needed. And she would prove that she was more than just a weakness to be exploited, she was his greatest strength. The threat ended 2 weeks later in a coordinated strike that Lorenzo planned with military precision. Bella wasn't told the details for her own protection, Lorenzo insisted, but she saw the aftermath in his eyes when he came home at dawn, exhausted but satisfied. "It's done," was all he said before pulling her into his arms. "You're safe now." The relief was overwhelming. Bella cried against his chest, all the fear and stress of the past weeks finally releasing. Lorenzo held her through it, murmuring reassurances in Italian, his hands gentle as they stroked her hair. "I need to tell you something," he said once she'd calmed. He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. "When Costello had you in his sights, when I thought I might lose you, Bella, I realized something I've been too stubborn and too scared to admit." Bella's heart began to pound. "What?" "I love you." The words came out raw and honest, stripped of any pretense. "I'm in love with you. I don't know when it happened, maybe that first dinner when you challenged me, maybe when you walked down the aisle toward me, maybe in all the small moments in between. But it's true, you're not just my wife or my partner, you're the other half of my soul, and I can't imagine my life without you anymore." Tears spilled down Bella's cheeks, but these were happy tears. "Lorenzo, you don't have to say it back," he continued quickly. "I know this started as an arrangement. I know I'm not an easy man to love, but I needed you to know, I needed you to understand that this is real for me now. You're real for me." "Stop talking," Bella commanded, framing his face with her hands. "I love you too, you impossible, stubborn, wonderful man. I've been falling in love with you since you slid this ring on my finger and promised to protect me. Since you gave me freedom instead of a cage. Since you looked at me like I was precious instead of convenient." Lorenzo's expression transformed, hope and joy and relief flooding his features. "Say it again." "I love you, Lorenzo Romano, with everything I am." He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of all the emotion they'd both been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I don't deserve you," Lorenzo murmured against her lips. "Probably not," Bella agreed with a watery laugh, "but you're stuck with me anyway." "Good, because I'm never letting you go." They spent the rest of the morning in bed, making love with a new intensity now that emotions were laid bare. Everything felt different, deeper, more meaningful. This wasn't just physical attraction or marital obligation. This was love in its rawest, most powerful form. Later, wrapped in sheets with sunlight streaming through the windows, Lorenzo pulled Bella against his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "I want to take you away," he said suddenly. "Somewhere beautiful and far from this life, just us for a week, a real honeymoon." "What about your business?" "It can wait, you're more important." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "What do you say, want to run away with your mafia husband for a bit?" Bella smiled against his skin. "As long as you promise to come back." "Always, you're my home now, Bella. Wherever you are, that's where I belong." The honeymoon in Positano was everything Bella had dreamed of and more. They stayed in a private villa overlooking the Amalfi Coast, days spent exploring towns and nights spent tangled together on the terrace under the stars. For one perfect week, Lorenzo wasn't a mafia boss and Bella wasn't a mob wife, they were just two people in love. But all honeymoons must end, and returning to reality meant facing new challenges. 6 months after their wedding, Bella sat in a doctor's office, staring at a positive pregnancy test with a mix of terror and joy. She was going to be a mother, Lorenzo was going to be a father. That evening, she planned an elaborate dinner, her nerves making her hands shake as she set the table. When Lorenzo arrived home, he immediately sensed something was different. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern etching his features. "Nothing's wrong, everything's perfect, actually." Bella took his hand, leading him to the dining room. "Sit, I have something to tell you." Lorenzo sat, his intense gaze never leaving her face. Bella pulled out the test, placing it on the table between them. For a moment, Lorenzo just stared, then his eyes shot to hers, wide with shock and something that looked like wonder. "You're pregnant." Bella nodded, tears already forming. "About 8 weeks. I know we said we'd wait, and I know the timing isn't perfect with everything going on, but..." She didn't get to finish because Lorenzo was out of his chair and pulling her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could feel his heart racing against hers. "Perfect," he breathed. "The timing is perfect, you're perfect. This is..." His voice cracked, and when he pulled back, Bella was shocked to see tears in his eyes. Lorenzo Romano, the devil of the underworld, crying, "I'm going to be a father." "You're happy." "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He dropped to his knees, his hands gently cradling her still flat stomach. Hello in there, little one, I'm your papa, and I promise you I'm going to be better than my father was. I'm going to give you everything: love, safety, a family that will protect you with everything we have. Bella's tears fell freely as she ran her fingers through Lorenzo's hair. This moment, her dangerous, powerful husband on his knees making promises to their unborn child, was the most beautiful thing she'd ever witnessed. The pregnancy brought changes. Lorenzo became even more protective if that was possible. He insisted on accompanying her to every doctor's appointment, his hand gripping hers tightly during ultrasounds, his face awed when they heard the heartbeat for the first time. "It's a girl," the doctor announced at the 20-week scan. "A healthy baby girl." Lorenzo's grip on Bella's hand tightened, his eyes fixed on the screen showing their daughter's profile. "A girl," he repeated, his voice hoarse with emotion. "We're having a daughter." That night, lying in bed with his hand on Bella's swelling belly, Lorenzo was quieter than usual. "What are you thinking?" Bella asked. "I'm thinking about how terrifying it is to love something this much already. She's not even born yet and I'd kill for her, die for her." He looked at Bella, vulnerability written across his features. "I'm thinking about what kind of father I'll be, what kind of world I'm bringing her into." Bella placed her hand over his on her stomach. "You're going to be an amazing father. You already are. You're already protecting her, already loving her. That's what matters." "I want to be better," Lorenzo said fiercely. "For her, for you, I want to build something that's not just about power and fear. I want our daughter to be proud of her father, not terrified of what he does." It was a promise that would shape their future. In the months that followed, Lorenzo began making changes, legitimizing more of the business, distancing himself from the most violent aspects of the life, building something that could last generations without destroying them. When their daughter, Isabella Marie Romano, was born on a spring morning, Lorenzo held her with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the tiny person they'd created. "She's perfect," he whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to Isabella's dark hair, "just like her mother." Bella watched her husband cradle their daughter, this man who commanded an empire with ruthless efficiency, rendered speechless by a 7-pound baby. And she knew with absolute certainty that everything they'd been through, the arranged marriage, the fear, the threats, had been worth it for this moment. 5-year-old Isabella Romano was a force of nature, with her mother's beauty and her father's stubborn determination. Bella watched from the terrace as Lorenzo chased their daughter through the gardens, Isabella's laughter ringing out like bells. "Papa, you're too slow," Isabella taunted, her dark curls bouncing as she ran. "Too slow, am I?" Lorenzo caught her effortlessly, swinging her into the air as she shrieked with delight. "Take it back." "Never." A hand slipped into Bella's and she looked down at their son, 3-year-old Marco, named for Lorenzo's brother, who watched his father and sister with serious, dark eyes. "Papa is silly," Marco pronounced solemnly. Bella laughed, pulling her son close. "Yes, he is, but we love him anyway." Lorenzo looked up then, catching her eye across the garden. The smile he gave her was pure happiness, uncomplicated by the darkness that had once defined him. He was still powerful, still commanded respect and fear in certain circles. But he was also a man who coached his daughter's soccer team, who read bedtime stories with different voices for every character, who slow danced with his wife in the kitchen while dinner burned on the stove. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Bella found Lorenzo in his study, not working for once but looking at photos from their wedding day. "Having regrets?" she teased, settling into his lap. "Not even one." He closed the album, focusing entirely on her. "You know what I was thinking about? How 5 years ago I thought I was getting a wife out of obligation, a beautiful stranger to give me heirs and legitimacy. And instead I got everything: a partner who challenges me, who makes me better, a family that feels like more than I deserved, a love I didn't think existed." He cupped her face tenderly. "You've given me a life worth living, Bella, not just surviving but actually living." Bella kissed him softly. "We gave that to each other, this arranged marriage that neither of us wanted. It became the greatest love story of our lives." "Who would have thought the devil could fall so completely?" "Any smart person," Bella countered. "You were always capable of love, Lorenzo, you just needed the right person to show you." He pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "Ti amo, Mrs. Romano, today, tomorrow, and every day after." Ti amo, Bella echoed, forever and always. Outside, the moon rose over the ocean, casting silver light across the estate. Inside, a mafia boss and his arranged bride, now partners, lovers, parents, and soulmates, held each other close, grateful for the unexpected gift of a love that had bloomed from obligation into something extraordinary. Their story had started with an arrangement, but it had become something neither contracts nor families could have predicted. A genuine, fierce, beautiful love that would last a lifetime. And that, Bella thought as Lorenzo carried her to bed, was the best kind of surprise.